Welcome to Conversation with on BCAT. My name is Char Burnett. This is a program on BCAT where I invite one person and we just have a conversation about what's going on with them, what they're working on. I'm really pleased today to have Chris Endresen with me. Chris and I we go back many, many years with our work on BCAT and her work in the politics of Kitsap County. Chris, so good to see you. Thanks so much for your time today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's good to see you.
So here we are on the end of County Road number 59, and we are on the waterfront in Paulsbo, and this is a little gem of a place. It's just beautiful. We found this in our exploration of where to do our interview with Chris, and we wanted to keep it in Paulsbo. So Chris, let's get right into it and give us some background on all your political life in Kitsap County. And
Oh my gosh.
She's got a lot in her head.
Let's see. Well, we moved to Paulsbo in 1982 from Ballard, and I had grown up in Seattle, went to Queen Anne, graduated, and never been involved in politics, never made a speech in my life. And in 1984, I got involved in Gary Hart's campaign.
Oh, wow.
And by doing that, I met Jack Fletcher, who was on the city council in Paulsbo, and he said, "We need good people on the planning commission." And I said, "I don't know anything about planning." He says, "You don't have to, it's okay." So I was Mayor Atack at the time appointed me to the planning commission, and about a year later we had a big uprising in Paulsbo with our council and mayor not getting along. And there was an advisory vote, and 5 of 7 council members and the mayor were voted out of office. So Kurt Rudolph and Ed Jensen were council members at the time, the 2 remaining, and they appointed the rest of the council. And I was appointed to the council in '85 and ran in '85 and ran in '86, ran in 1990.
And that was your first intro, really,
that
to
was,
politics.
That was. I had
just that whole process.
I had a business in Seattle, so I commuted and was on city council. I had both my
And you had
kids
babies.
while I was
Yeah.
on city council.
Wow.
And it was, it was a great experience, and I developed a real passion and a love for local government. And
What's your background, Chris, your education background?
I graduated from Queen Anne. I went to the University of Washington. I took classes on Bellevue Community College online, and eventually got my master's degree in public administration from the University of Washington, the Evans School.
Oh, cool.
And that was in 2005.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, that was way after that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So.
Wow, that's a great program, but that's another sidebar.
Study session with the kids.
Yeah.
So, in 1993, John Horsley, our county commissioner, received an appointment with the Clinton administration, and
Right.
so I...
Where did he go? Transportation?
Transportation. He was an assistant secretary for transportation. I applied for and was appointed in July of '93 to his position as county commissioner. And
How many people wanted that seat? Do you remember?
Oh, I think there were 3 of us, maybe a few more. And had to run in the primary. Started in July, had to run in a primary, and I actually lost by 200 votes in the primary to Mary McClure.
Oh,
who
no kidding.
is one of my dearest friends. And so politics makes really strange bedfellows.
Yes.
So then Matt Ryan went on to win, and then in '96 I ran against Matt Ryan and became commissioner. So I served 3.5 terms, and it was a wonderful 10.5 years.
That was a long time on the county commission, and lots of good work, lots of hard work, lots of things going on for the county back then.
Right. We have, and there still is, and that is what's so challenging and so appealing about local government, is because you really get a chance to implement things. They take a long time.
Right.
But you really get to create some good lasting legacy, whether it's cleaning up the landfill at Bainbridge Island, or working with the Port Gamble Slalom Tribe for over 10 years to reach an agreement on a cleanup of the Hansville landfill. And you really have to be patient, because these things do just really take a lot of patience and take a lot of time. But I think the thing I'm the proudest of and the happiest about that we were able to do in my time on the commission was the amount of open space and parks that we were able to acquire, because once the land is built on, you can't
You
go
don't get it
back.
back.
And
Exactly.
we did a lot of
You did a
fun
lot of
stuff.
great work.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that is the fun stuff.
Yeah.
The parks, recreation, open space. That's all the warm, fuzzy, feel good stuff. But
Yeah,
you also
yeah.
made some really hard decisions, and growth management, comp plan was all going on
Always.
then, and
Always.
Yeah.
Land use is always difficult because you're talking about people's investment in their property, and you're talking about who your neighbors are,
Right.
and what the landscape's going to look like, what you're going to look at every day. So yeah, they are difficult decisions.
So what year was it Miss Cantwell said, "Hey, I need you. Why don't you come and think about working for me?"
That was the end of April that I got a call, and I was getting in a van with our brand new Commissioner Josh Brown and our brand new Parks Director and our new County Administrator to do a tour of the North End Parks. And I got a call that Kurt Beckett, her state director, was leaving, and she wanted to talk to me about the job. And so I said, "Okay, can I call you guys back?"
Can I call you back?
And it was a difficult, very difficult decision. I took about 10 days, 2 weeks, because I always would decide the beginning of the third year of my 4-year term if I was going to run again, because if you're not, you want to give someone
Give
time,
somebody some time, right.
or several people time to think about it and prepare for it, because it's a big decision. And so I took a couple of weeks. I talked to a few of my trusted advisors, and decided that I would have the opportunity to still do a lot of great things for Kitsap,
Right.
and still do good things for counties, but at a state level. So I decided to take the job, and I started with her just the end of June of 2007. So it's been 4 years since I left the county.
So how was that transition from local county government and being home a lot, or, at least being in Kitsap,
Right.
to being now with this extremely powerful congresswoman, and she's got lots of stuff going on, and now you're working the whole state.
It was fun. It was really fun.
Lots of travel, though.
Lots of travel. I was involved in the Washington State Association of Counties and the National Association of Counties, and I loved those two organizations. And actually, at the time, I was in line to be president of WASAC, and so I knew a lot about state issues. Of course, I knew all the commissioners, or most of them, and so it gave me the opportunity to really see the breadth and the differences of the state, but also the similarities
Right.
of what we need across the state of Washington. And we talk about there being a divide of east and west. And, there is. The Cascade Mountains are there. It's a
Yep.
very different place. But a lot of the issues that local government faces are the same across the state. So being able to work on those issues, being able to see this great state we live in, and the nooks and crannies. And Senator
Right.
Cantwell gets into the nooks and crannies.
Does she? She
She
goes
takes as much
real
time in
local.
state as she can, and she
Awesome.
likes to get up to Republic, which
Oh,
is,
yeah, it's
which,
beautiful
yeah,
up there.
right, and
Oh, I
Ponderay,
Yeah,
and, County,
nice.
and it's hard. So she works. Nobody works harder than she does on her staff, and we are blessed to have the delegation, the federal delegation that we have in the state, because they're all in really good positions for issues that matter to us. And Senator Cantwell's on commerce, and she's on finance, and she's on energy, and she's also on small business and Native American affairs. So it's
yeah.
a big plate.
Huge. But she has been in office for how long? 12?
Yes, yeah. Well, it'll
So
be 12 years next year.
You
So this will be her
kind
third
of
term.
work up through the ranks, and as you get a little more chutzpah and a little more experience, I think you start
Right.
getting plugged into those.
Well, and she really
extremely
studies the issues, so she.
Great. but she works hard.
She
So
works hard,
her
so we
staff
work
worked.
hard.
So what is the role of the state director for the congresswoman?
Well, whatever needs to be done, we do. That's the state. The senator. I don't work for her anymore.
Senator, yeah.
The senator has 6 offices across the state, and the state's job is to make sure that while she's working for us in Washington D.C., that she knows, and we all know, what's important to the state, what the current issues are, how the senator can help with the issues that we need help with on a federal level. So that's basically to make sure that all those moving pieces happen. Then there's the making sure that when she is in state, she gets to
Plugged in and
as many places as possible. We're hearing from individuals and businesses what they need her to know and what she needs to know so she can represent them on the floor of the
and
Senate.
it was your job. You oversaw all the other state offices. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Right. Right.
That's a big job.
Was
Fun, though.
fantastic. Fantastic.
Especially, Chris, you've got such a passion for service, government service, and to make the transition from being a county commissioner, which is really hands-on to the people, now taking it up a notch, and now you're really hands-on with federal legislators and local folks. So
And, yeah, right,
Your,
yeah.
And your experience at the local level helped you tremendously.
It did.
And I mean, what a smart woman to say, Chris, I want you, I want you to help me.
I wondered how it was going to go between being elected and being staff. Because some people can't make that transition.
Huge.
Either way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but-
you're not the boss anymore.
Right,
You
right.
get told what to do.
yeah. Sometimes that's okay.
Sometimes that is okay. So, almost 4 years with Senator Cantwell, is that
3
correct?
years. 3
About
years
3
with Senator Cantwell. Right.
And up came this job at Puget Sound Regional Council. Tell us
Right.
a little bit about that.
Well, the Puget Sound Regional Council is our metropolitan planning organization. It's the 4 counties around Puget Sound. So it's King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap. Together, those counties represent over half the population in the state. And the PSRC, we call it, started as the Transportation Planning Organization. So, and those were formed by the federal government to have, actually local governments have a voice in where the federal transportation dollars go. So we did that. When then growth management came on, we became the regional planning organization. Our members are counties, cities, tribal governments, and ports in the 4-county region.
Very similar makeup to our Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council.
It's similar. It's of course much larger.
Larger, though. Right.
So
right.
there are 3 legs to our policy stool at PSRC. So we have growth management, transportation, and economic development. And our executive director, Bob Drull, my boss, who is the most wonderful man that ever walked the face of the earth, says you don't make a transportation and a land use planning decision and not have it impact economic development. So in 2004, the Economic Development District, which is my board, was a separate organization outside of Puget Sound Regional Council.
Oh, really?
And it's funded largely through the EDA, Economic Development Administration. It's a district that's created by the federal government. We have member dues, but we also, for our projects, raise money for our federal match from the private sector. So Boeing and Microsoft are very important people in our lives. They fund a lot of the important work that they do, along with a number of other organizations. The Suquamish Tribe and Madison Enterprises have given us money, and ports and cities and that. So it's a conglomeration for the economic development part. Then for growth management and transportation, we receive a lot of federal dollars. And then, of course, our member agencies pay dues. And we've been really mindful over the last several years not to raise dues because we know cities and counties are struggling
really
so much
struggling.
with this economy.
Right.
And so the organization is pretty lean. We have a robust data department that most people don't know about. And so the latest census data our folks take and shake it out in different ways for the region, and everyone can get
That's
that
amazing.
information online.
Sure.
So
That's great.
it's a wonderful organization, really,
Good.
to coordinate these things together for the 4 counties, because of course we all interact so
Yeah.
closely.
Yeah. Let's take a little break, and then you've given us a good overview of PSRC. I want to go really into it and talk about our local representation in your work and some other things about PSRC. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Chris Endresen. Welcome back to Conversation With. My guest today is Chris Endresen. We have talked about her fabulous work in local politics at the county level with Paulsbo City Council and Kitsap County Board of Commissioners, and also her time with Senator Cantwell. And now we're really talking about her work at PSRC, which is the Puget Sound Regional Council. So Chris, how did you make that transition from working with Senator Cantwell to the PSRC?
Well, I had, when I was commissioner, been on the executive committee and also the Transportation Policy Board of PSRC, and I loved the work they did, and I heard that they had an opening in economic development. So I called Bob Drull, who's the director, and talked to him about it. I applied for the job, and fortunately for me, they hired me. So.
Wow. So Puget Sound Regional Council, your office is in Seattle.
Right.
Right downtown, and you represent Snohomish, King, Pierce, and Kitsap counties. That's what
Correct. The
Puget Sound Regional Council is made up of.
Right, and the cities and tribal governments and port districts within those counties.
There's a membership to be paid to the PSRC that those entities pay.
Correct.
And then you're doing some fundraising for projects.
Correct, and in the Economic
Good.
Development Division, right.
Good.
Right.
Wow. So let's talk about how Kitsap is represented on this huge entity of PSRC, which is really the heavy hitters. Those other 3 counties are the really heavy hitters, and here's little Kitsap going, we're just as important.
Well, Josh Brown is the president.
That's exactly right.
Was just
And hard to
elected.
ignore him.
So, but Kitsap is very well represented, and the structure of Puget Sound Regional Council is there is the executive board, which is all elected officials. And Josh is the president. County Executive Pierce County, Pat McCarthy is the vice president this year. And Kitsap representatives on that board are Carol Ahrens, Becky Erickson, Bill Mahan, and then Charlotte Garrido, Patty Lent, Will Maupin, and Larry Stokes are the alternates to the executive board.
Great.
Then there are 2 policy boards, the Transportation Policy Board and the Growth Management Policy Board. They do a lot of the heavy lifting in the details of the policy, and we're well represented on those boards as well. They make recommendations to the executive board.
Okay.
And on Transportation Policy Board, Carol Ahrens, longtime member.
Long time.
Kim Brackett from Bainbridge, Josh Brown. And then both policy boards have non-voting community or outside organization members.
Oh, interesting.
So Luella Wells, who lives on Bainbridge Island, represents the League of Women Voters on the Transportation
Great.
Policy Board.
Great.
And then the alternates for that are Jim Colbank and from Port Orchard, Dick Hayes, and Bill Mahan.
Oh, great.
Right.
So those are a lot of familiar names.
Right, and then Growth Management Policy Board, Will Maupin is the vice chair of that, and Hillary Franz, Charlotte Garrido, Rob Purser serve on those, and then CAPO has a member, Robert Benz or Benzie, sorry Robert, and then the alternates we have are Linda Berry Murray, Tom Ostrom, Greg Wheeler, and Mike Gustafson.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of Kitsap representation.
It's a lot. And then the Economic Development District Board is a little bit different. Since it's a kind of a separate agency under the umbrella of Puget Sound Regional Council, we have both private sector and public sector voting members.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So Leonard Forsman is on our board, Charlotte Garrido, Patty Lent, Ed Stern, Roger Zabinski, and Bill Stewart from the EDA. The Navy has a seat on the board.
Great.
And that's a recent recent development, the president of our board can appoint others outside. So the Navy has agreed to send someone
Excellent.
in an ex officio capacity.
Uh-huh.
And then the alternates are Josh Brown, Kathy Kokas, Hillary Franz, Bill Mahan, Russell Steele, and Larry Stokes. So we are
Very
well
well
represented.
represented.
We also have, there are 4 or 5 of us who live in Kitsap County who work at Puget Sound Regional Council.
Really?
Yes, yes.
So you all commute together and hang out on the boat and talk about stuff and get all your work done and
Well, we don't usually sit together.
oh really?
But if something comes up, I know where to find the deputy director.
So Chris, let's get into some projects. What are you working on in economic development for
Well,
PSRC?
You know, in my role as director, I work for the board, our Economic Development District Board, and also carry out the work of the Prosperity Partnership. And the Prosperity Partnership is a group of over 350 business, labor, government, and nonprofit entities that came together in 2005 to say economic development planning for our region is really important, and we need to do it as a region instead of in all the disparate places. All come together and create a plan. We really are one of the few regions in the United States that has as robust of an economic development plan and strategy as we do. So the first strategy was developed in 2005, and it's a cluster-based, industry cluster-based strategy, and we have 7 clusters. We have in the region 15 clusters that are at or above the national average for business concentration in an area. We chose 7 to really focus and drill down on because we want to take the areas where we get the most bang for the buck. So they're trade and logistics, aerospace, information technology, clean tech, which didn't start out as clean tech, life sciences, military, and tourism. And
Great.
of course, in Kitsap, military is huge. That plan was done for a 5-year period, and of course, the economy is so different.
Yes.
So our big project right now is to do a complete overhaul of the plan, a complete update. And we just received funding. We've raised the funding for our match and started in May. So the basis of the plan is data-driven. So the first thing we're doing is reassessing the total economic DNA of the region, and we will look anew at where we're concentrating our efforts. One of the things that's going to be different that I'm pretty excited about is we're going to be looking across industry clusters at occupations, because we all know that machinists don't all work at Boeing. They make medical devices.
Exactly.
They make vessels. They
Right.
they work in the shipyard. So we're going to be looking at how that crosses. Engineering is important more and more to everything that we do in our life. There's very little that doesn't have an engineer behind creating it or making it work or making it work better or inventing it. Some of the projects that we're working on now that are very exciting is a global health nexus. When I said life sciences, you kind of
I kind of
raised
like
your eyebrows.
Yeah, what is that?
We have the highest concentration in the world, except for Geneva, of businesses and organizations that are doing work in global health in the world, here in the Puget Sound region.
No kidding.
And most people don't know that. So the Global Health Nexus was created to brand our region as a global health center.
Nice.
And so it's a very exciting project. We have the Washington Aerospace Partnership, which was formed to originally work on the 787, the first line, and then morphed into working on the tanker contract, Boeing getting the tanker contract. And that became a national effort where we partnered with governors in other areas.
Right.
So now what we're doing is working on the 737 successor to make sure that it's built in Washington. And our motto is, we don't care where it's built as long as it's in Washington State. and it's going to be it's a big project. The governor is very engaged in that, and as are our businesses, government, nonprofit, labor unions from across the state. So we have a Monday call every day, and you'll be hearing more about that.
Good.
And I think
Good.
there was a little bit in the Kitsap Sun about Bremerton being interested, and
Oh, that's right. That's right.
course
Out
the-
towards Skia.
yeah, of course the Bremerton Airport can land a 737, so why not?
Heard Carrie
We have a
say
good
that.
workforce.
I heard Carrie say that just the other day.
But of course, since I work for the council, I'm unbiased.
There you go.
Let's see. We're doing some wonderful work with the Brookings Institute, which was going on before I came on board. But it's a metropolitan business plan. We were one of 3 regions in the country chosen by Brookings to treat economic development planning a little different, like a business. So we call it metropolitan business planning, and we chose to take the clean tech sector and really create a business plan to help that industry grow in our area. So we looked at what are the barriers to our new creative businesses that want to get into clean tech. And what we discovered was it was access and I say accountability, but basically you could create something that you would think would save 30% energy on a building. And you can't sell it unless you can prove it actually does what you say. And you need to be able to test those things in the real world. So we came up with what we call BETI, which is the Building Energy Efficiency Testing Demonstration and Integration Center. If anybody remembers my aversion to acronyms,
Yeah, Betty.
Betty is necessary.
Yeah.
So we worked with Brookings to create a business plan which looks at our assets, what our obstacles are, the funding, how to fund it, just like you would go take to a bank. Only
Excellent.
what we're doing is taking that to the federal government and saying, instead of us applying for a grant from Department of Energy to do part of this and Department of Labor to do part of this, why don't we tell you what we need and then you help us get one grant that will help make it work. And we have private sector partners with this, and the education community is really excited about it. PNNL, Pacific National Lab, which is based over in Tri-Cities, is excited about it. It's City of Seattle helped us fund it. That's another one of these our
Nice.
partners. So it's a really exciting project, but I want to talk before we get done about our military cluster.
Quickly,
because it's so
'cause we're
important.
almost out of time.
It's the Washington Defense Partnership, which was created out of our strategy. We just had a meeting with over 50 people present, and it's in the last 2 years really concentrated on helping veterans and people separating the military with get into the workforce here, so we could keep those people here.
Oh, good.
We've had some really great successes with Department of Licensing in training that military folks have done while they're in the service, being counted towards applying to their state licensing when they want to do that in health fields and security. Also being able to transfer a commercial driver's license. If you're driving a commercial vehicle and have all the training in the military, you should be able to get a Washington commercial driver's license without being redundant training again. So those are a few things, but we just had a meeting and we really want to beef it up because the 4 counties here have a huge military presence. Joint Base Lewis McChord is the 2nd largest employer in the state, or the 3rd, and the Navy is the 4th largest employer in the state. We want to make sure that Washington businesses are getting more of the contracts for the military. So we're going to be going in that direction. So those are a few of the things we're doing.
That's a lot. That is high-level stuff.
Yeah, and we have a lot of partners that help us do it.
And you have a lot of partners. Wow. Chris, you're busy, and we're just so glad you're representing Kitsap. You're not representing Kitsap, but you are our Kitsap gal working for PSRC and really advancing Western Washington's presence and goals in economic development. And we're very thankful. And I thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thanks, Sharon.
It was
It's
great
Yeah,
talking
it's good
to
see
you. Thanks for joining us on Conversation With today.